Welcome to another edition of The Local Show here on Grassroots Community Network. I'm Erik, your host. Thanks for joining us, guys. Where each week we feature inspirational locals, and I'm so excited and honored to be joined by a first-time guest of the week, recently inducted in the Aspen Hall of Fame, Dr. Barry Mink. Welcome to the show, Barry.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Well, it's my honor. You were actually my doctor for many years.
Well, I was until I retired.
Until you retired, and we'll talk about your long, fabled medical career, and you also have an athletic. You have an athletic career, and then you kind of combine the two, which is really interesting too. But I want to talk about where you were born and raised. From
Sure.
Chicago originally.
Yes, I was born and raised in Chicago.
Okay.
And high school there, and then I went to Northwestern College there. Yeah.
In Evanston there.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like growing up in Chicago?
It was fine. It was good. I was didn't realize how good it was at the time, probably, but it was very good. My folks had a big family there, and I was always part of a big family, and always had cousins and sisters and so forth. Always playmates around. Yeah.
And your dad sounds like he was very athletic, and he was quite an influence on you.
My father was a physical education teacher in Chicago, and he was an All-American soccer player, University of Illinois, and he played professional basketball for the Rochester Royals.
That's
when
incredible.
he graduated college.
So he's versatile. He wasn't only an athlete; he was a versatile athlete. And
Yes.
then he would share that through being
He had
bio
very
teacher.
good coordination. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And he took up golf later in life and did pretty well at that too.
No kidding. And what were the first kind of influences that you remember, like with your dad in particular, when you first started like playing sports?
Sure. Well, I can remember we had an apartment there in Chicago, and there was an alley, a back alley, and when he got home from work, he would get me out in the back alley, and we would play catch, and he'd pitch balls to me, and there were little tennis balls.
Okay.
But he emphasized that a lot in my childhood, athletics, and it was always fun. He took me to the Cubs games and the Bear games, and we shared a lot of athletic fun together. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then we'll talk. Actually, let's talk about this before the break. You would go on then after high school to actually be drafted by the Cincinnati Reds?
Yes,
That's incredible.
I played football and baseball in high school.
Okay.
And football was, I thought, my forte because I was a quarterback, and I was all conference and had a lot of colleges after me.
Okay.
And when I was a junior and senior. But baseball was my father's suggestion because I wasn't very big.
Okay.
But I had I had a good throwing arm as a quarterback and had some good running skills. But baseball he thought was my forte. So in high school I was scouted by several major league teams and worked out at Wrigley Field one time. The Cubs had me out there. But I signed with Cincinnati. I was 18 years old. I just graduated high school.
Were you a pitcher or what position?
I was a catcher.
A catcher. Okay. So was your dad afraid you would just get slaughtered? Like
football?
Crushed as a quarterback?
Oh, I'm sure he did.
He's not quite big enough. I'm worried about him.
Well, I don't think that was it. I think he knew that I would not be as successful in football because I was a little small. But I was small. And so he put me on the path towards baseball.
And so you played, how long did you play for the Reds then?
3 years. I was in their farm system.
Okay.
But we played, almost 100 games a year. I played with Pete Rose, and I played for 2 years together on the same team. Tony Perez, who's in the Hall of Fame, played with us, played on my team or our team. There were quite a few other major leaguers that made it.
Incredible. And how did that come to an end? Like what?
Well, it was kind of a funny accident. I was playing flag football for the fraternity at Northwestern, and I was a quarterback there, and I got hit and fell funny on my arm and broke and dislocated my throwing shoulder.
Oh man!
So it was a long recovery. In those days, there was no real sports medicine. It was all they strapped me up with like this for 6 weeks.
Old school.
And when I got out, I could hardly, I couldn't throw very well. Cincinnati kept me another year. They put me in the outfield because I wouldn't have to constantly throw. But it didn't work out, and I was released after 3 years.
Okay. Well, we're already 5 minutes in, Barry. We're going to take a quick break. I know I need to rehydrate. Very important, as you know, as a doctor,
Absolutely.
to stay hydrated. We're going to have some heavy talking.
Yeah, this is hard work, isn't it?
I know. It's going to be a grueling conversation once we get into the main body of the show.
Okay.
But I do want to thank our winter underwriters who support the local show now in our 16th year of broadcasting here on Grassroots Community Network. Aspen Animal Hospital, Aspen Public House, The Aspen Times, Aspen Square, Klug Properties, Sundog Athletics, and Pitkin County Landfill. We'll go to a quick break, our only one of the show, guys. We'll be back with Dr. Mink. He not only played for the Cincinnati Reds, he became an endurance athlete and then an endurance doctor. So we've got so much to talk about, so don't go away. Thanks for sticking with us here on The Local Show, a show just for you locals. If you're not a local, please turn off the TV immediately. Just kidding. We do want to welcome our Facebook Live audience, and now we're broadcast on YouTube. Barry, we're in high definition now here at Grassroots TV this last year, so it's enabled us to go on all these different platforms. So it's great to share through Facebook and YouTube. And now you're going worldwide. So
my God.
I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
Hope you're not nervous.
Shoot, I'm ready.
But I want to talk about your transition to endurance sports because you know, as we talked about in the intro to the show, played baseball, you played football at a pretty serious level, it sounds like. What was the transition like to go to running and some of these mountain endurance sports? Was that a function of basically moving to the mountains, or how did that play out?
Well, sure, partly it was that, but it was mainly I was a physician, and physicians are pretty busy people.
Yeah.
So when I came to Aspen, I really came as part of the recreational interest was alpine skiing.
Okay.
But when I got here, there wasn't time to go alpine skiing. It was running some time at lunch, which running was the easiest thing to do. So I'd like to be active and physical just because of my history. And so lunch or before work, or if I could squeeze one in after work, I'd go for a run.
Okay.
And that kind of led up to my interests, and it became, again, a self-interest of mine to see what this endurance physiology was all about. And because I started entering races, and one race led to a marathon, and the marathons led to ultra marathons, and in the winter, to keep my fitness, I became interested in cross-country skiing and Nordic skiing. And so those things escalated into much more progressive and advanced endeavors, yeah.
Did you race the Birkebeiner?
Yes.
Up in northern Wisconsin, which is, I think, the biggest Nordic
event
in
if you're a cross-country skier, that's kind of the golden standard to try to run the Birkebeiner. It's one of the oldest ski marathons there is. And it takes after the Norwegian Birkebeiner in Norway.
Right.
So yeah, it's a big event in Wisconsin. Yeah.
And you competed in the Mountain Man, which was a winter triathlon, correct?
Yes, the Mountain Man triathlon was over in Avon.
Okay.
That's cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and speed skating. That was the 3 events.
How do you pull off speed skating in particular? Like, I get the other ones, but there's nowhere to really train speed skating. I don't even think in the Roaring Fork Valley. In fact, the only rink used to be in Wisconsin at West Dallas for years. That's why Erik Hayden and Bonnie Blair and they all came out of Wisconsin. So how do you train speed skate, or do you just kind of wing it?
No, I never had a pair of speed skates. I had regular hockey skates.
Okay.
But when we did this Mountain Man triathlon, our small group of guys, it was John Dozier who actually won the thing, Art Schwartz,
Skip Hamilton, was he in there?
Skip and the Willie, one of the Willie brothers was in that. But
Okay.
anyways,
Raul, probably.
we all knew he could do well in cross country. The cross country was 17 miles, and
Okay.
you had to skin up to the top of Beaver Creek. Then you
Amazing.
had to skate around their Nordic course. Then you came down, skied down, which was the hardest part on those little skis coming down Beaver Creek.
Right.
And then you put on your snowshoes and went back up. Then you ran down into the Avon Lake area.
Oh my gosh.
So the snowshoe was 8 miles. And then the speed skate was 13 miles on the oval in the lake.
That's significant.
Yeah, it was.
I thought you were going to say it was going to be like 2 miles, like it was like the least, but that's significant.
It was big. But speed skating we couldn't train for. You'd go to the Brown Palace and take 2 strides and you were at the end of it.
Right, right.
So you did have to wing it, you're right. But your endurance was good. And
Yeah.
And those big long blades were a little easier to get some strides on it. And the
Right.
speed skating was like Nordic skating, Nordic ski skating.
Right.
So there was the same type of muscle groups. Yeah.
Right, like skiing, and there's
Yes.
some crossover to speed skating.
Yeah,
that
is.
makes sense.
There is.
That makes sense. You get a little bit of technique.
So you can get the glide and the weight shift correctly. Yeah.
I actually pulled speed skates out for the first time in 40-something years when Maroon Lake froze. Really, I guess that would have been late fall.
Okay.
And everyone was going up there. There was like pickup hockey games going on. One day an Aspen school bus went up. They had over 200 kids on Maroon Lake, of course, before
yeah.
the snow had settled
Sure.
on the lake, and got around and just did a little where one of the dads had shoveled off.
Oh, nice.
Because then it did snow, and the dads were shoveling off little mini rinks and did a couple laps on the speed skates just
that's
for old
nice.
time's
Yeah.
sake.
I never even thought of that.
Really fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
So most people know you as a longtime doctor in Aspen.
Right.
And how long were you a doctor, like in your total career?
I was here 40 years.
40 years. And you had also had quite an involvement with Aspen Valley Hospital.
Sure.
I guess just kind of looking back, and there's so many things you could talk about there, but what were some of the things that you loved most about being a doctor for so many years in Aspen?
Well, it's a small town, really, and you get to know your patients pretty well, and the patients were your friends you socialized with, or you trained with, or you competed with.
Right.
I had a really good partner with Dr. Harold Whitcomb. He was when I joined his practice when I came.
Okay.
And joined the Aspen Clinic with the orthopedics group, Dr. O'Dane and Dr. Kirk. Dr. Gould was also in that group. So it was mainly the enjoyment of taking care of people you knew.
Right.
Sure, we got a lot of tourists, but they were always interesting people and very stressed because they were on vacation, they got sick, and it was a big stress for them to be sick on vacation when they're coming to enjoy themselves or spending a lot of money, and then they had to be sidelined with an infection or with an ailment that made you really try to become involved with and getting them better. Yeah.
And then they don't have their own doctor at the same time, so that's a little strange for them. So
Exactly.
you have to kind of fill in for their doctor.
Exactly.
They're on their vacation, which is supposed to be the fun time of the year. So then they have quite a bit of anxiety and stress. But
Yes.
but even developing those friendships must have been really rewarding, and being able to
sure.
help people like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was, again, I said this before, but it's the people here that make this town. Sure, we live in the beautiful mountains and
Yes.
wonderful environment, a lot of opportunities both at the school levels, great schools, and the recreational levels. But it's the people, like you're having on your shows, these people that are so interesting and what make living here so great.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you don't miss? Like, say, that you didn't care for so much in your long medical career?
Oh, well, there's
probably a few things.
Well, a couple of things would be the call at 3 in.the morning,
Right.
where you had to get out of bed because we didn't have emergency room docs. You had to come in and take care of everything yourself.
Be that guy, huh?
So then you'd take care of that, and it'd be about 5 o'clock, and you'd get back home and get back to bed, and you get a call right again. You go back in. So it was a repetitive interruption of your sleep that I would be glad to miss. But it was part of the job, and it made it tougher, especially the next day when you had an office full of patients that you had to, see and take care of.
No
So
kidding.
it was those night calls that were the toughest. Yeah.
And were these typically like, I mean, these weren't delivering babies. This was like
No.
accidents or a car wreck or something like that?
Yeah, I was an internist.
Of that nature?
So
Okay.
I would deal mostly not with so much trauma or delivering babies.
Okay.
It was mainly with like heart attacks or strokes or
Okay.
gastrointestinal bleeding, diabetic crises or comas, those kind of things
Okay.
that got me out of bed, yeah.
And then you still have your regular patients who start lining up at 8 or whatever in the morning with a full day of seeing patients.
Right,
and-
but don't forget, I was a young man then.
yeah, right. So energy wasn't a problem. You were like,
Right,
no
right.
problem.
Yeah.
But then in the later years, that starts to be an endurance
Yeah,
event
it
in and of
becomes
itself.
tougher as you get older, that's for sure. You need your sleep. But I have no regrets. It was just a wonderful place. I'm a lucky guy to have
Yeah.
chosen this place and wound up here. Yeah.
Well, and then you would combine your love of athletics and your love of medicine
Right.
and be an Olympic doctor.
Yes.
Going to 2 Olympics, was it 1980 and 1994?
Correct.
Which is quite a big gap there, 14 years.
Yeah, well, I was a physician with the Nordic team and with the biathlon team for
Okay.
about 18 years.
Okay.
So every year we'd have training camps and do physicals and keep the records up to date. And I had a medical kit that was well equipped that they would call me from Bulgaria or something and say, hey, Erik's got a sore throat. What are we doing? And they tell me the symptoms. We didn't have cameras or anything. And I would tell them what to take out of the medical kit when they were in inaccessible areas. But otherwise, I try to travel with the team at least once or twice a year and go to the training camps and do the physicals and keep them as healthy as I could. Or else I would, wherever they were, if I knew the doc or could get through my own network, knowing doctors where they were so that they could be seen right away. So.
And how is that different, like, say, versus, kind of a standard practice versus treating these athletes? Like, how would you compare those two
It's
things?
a big difference. They could have the same ailment. Let's say it's a really bad earache.
Okay.
An aspirin, you could go ahead and take care of it. You go home for a couple of days and rest and recover and, be back in action.
Right.
But for them to miss a competition that they trained for 4 years,
Exactly.
they get an earache before an Olympic competition or a sore throat, even though it's a mundane problem, it's not real complicated, but you have to really be on your game,
Right.
both as bedside manner as well as the therapeutic approaches to get them their confidence level built up and for them to feel comfortable with the upcoming competition,
Right.
that it was a pretty stressful time. And there were some times when there were some serious things, especially I remember one time in Russia it was a serious cross-country skier that collapsed. And so it's a whole spectrum, but the difference, as you asked originally, was to the stress and pressure you're under to get
Right.
an athlete back into the competition.
Right.
Where somebody here in Aspen, we could say, go home and rest for 5 or 6 days.
Right, and then that psychology, like you mentioned, is huge. Because like the normal person is just going to go, oh, just go chill at home for a few days. The athlete's like, can I pull this off?
Yeah.
Am I going to be healed? So that's a whole
Right,
other
it's-
element of psyche that you have to
They're
deal with.
extremely tense, yeah, really
Right.
tense and concerned and worried that their whole career depends on this competition, or they've spent all this time training, and it's blown away by getting a simple ear infection a couple of days before the competition.
No pressure, Dr. Mink. It's just everything's riding. My whole life's riding on this, so no biggie. So what would you suggest? So the treatments might be a little different then, I would imagine, with that kind of urgency. and-
Sometimes there was a little more urgent treatment where sometimes you weren't sure if they really needed an antibiotic, but you erred on the side of using it.
Right,
You
right.
couldn't be, esoteric and scientific to the point where it would jeopardize their performance. Yeah.
Right.
And you had to be careful you didn't give them any medications that were banned, or there's a whole
That's the other
a
thing.
whole spectrum of that you couldn't always use what you needed to use to
Right.
that would be considered first line of treatment here in Aspen compared to an Olympic or World Cup competition. Yeah.
Yeah, I know just from being a cyclist and a competitive cyclist that, certain things like maybe sinus medication or whatever,
Right.
asthma medication, you may not be able to prescribe because it's a banned substance,
Correct.
under the rules.
Correct.
What about the Olympic experience? I mean, the Olympics are so incredible.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that sticks out in your mind? I mean, you went to 1980.
1980
Was that was in
Lake Placid.
Lake Placid?
So that was stateside.
Okay.
I was a chief medical officer for the biathlon venue and the biathlon team. And then in '94, I was in Lillehammer, Norway.
Oh, let's talk about Norway.
Yeah, that's a great play. I was the team physician there, the internist on the team. There was an orthopedist, a pediatrician, and we had some physical therapists and massage therapists. But that was amazing because we stayed in the Olympic Village with all the other teams, international teams in Norway, and the people of Norway were just fantastic in the Nordic events because that was their expertise. That was what they were famous for.
Yeah.
So we were treated royally in that, and after the competitions were over, I got a chance to ski on the trails. After, and you'd be skiing around, and there'd be a bunch of Norwegians cooking their sausages right off the trail, and drinking beer, and
almost
yelling,
like
screaming
tailgating.
at you, "Hey, American!" and offer you a beer or something. It was just great.
So was
Great place.
that had to be one of the highlights, and just the hospitality of the Norwegian people, because you kind of hear about that.
Oh,
I mean, that's my background.
They cheer for everybody, even though they want to see their countrymen win, but sportsmanship, they're the best and the most welcoming, and it's really a environment much like ours, a mountain type environment with the outdoor activities were priorities, and so it was just a great experience.
It's just so ingrained in their culture, especially the Nordic skiing, of course, originating from Norway, and then you just hear about, like, from Simi Hamilton and Noah Hoffman, our great skiers. Now Noah's retired, but Simi's still out there, and they talk about that. And then they do talk about some special beverages too. I think they have Euler, Aquavit, and did you enjoy any of those special Norwegian beverages when you were over there? I mean, you have to be a responsible doctor, but, maybe in your free time?
Sure. We socialized a bit. Security was pretty high, but we were able to get out and socialize, sure.
Yeah.
It was something that, once in a lifetime experience. But when you're in sports medicine or involved with this team for so many years, see these kids grow up, like in Lake Placid, it was Craig Ward, who was the captain of the Nordic team.
That's right.
That's where I first met him, and even though he lived here in Aspen. And then it was Johnny Callahan, and the Callahans and our kids grew up together, and then of course Simi and Noah and so forth.
Yeah, now Haley Swerble.
I read about her. Yeah.
U23 World Championships last weekend, and we're already down to a minute, Barry, but I wanted to touch on your Aspen Hall of Fame induction, because that's a big deal here. I mean, it is the Aspen Hall of Fame, and what does it mean to you? You were recently awarded, and what does that mean to you?
Well, I'm very, very honored, especially to be inducted with some of these names and iconic figures of Aspen. If you go look through the list of people that were, you feel like I'm not worthy. But
you're worthy. You're worthy.
Well, I was very honored that night at the Jerome. Was just so much fun. My kids were all there, and some of my family, and seeing all those people. There were so many memories, people you've known for the 40 years you've been here. It was just, I was just humbled and honored beyond belief.
We're already out of time. I mean, that must have been so heartwarming. It must have been overwhelming a little bit.
It was definitely overwhelming.
Did you have fun on the show today?
Yes.
I might overwhelm you again with my organic cookies that I baked you. They're sitting right there on the top with a few other goodies. But I want to thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
This is for you.
I'll take these. Wow.
That's for you. And those cookies are pretty good for powering athletics, I found. We break them out during our snowshoe tours.
Okay. No, I'll give them a good taste. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me know. Give me some quality control feedback.
I'll email you. Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Barry Mink.
Thank you,
really
Eric.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for joining us this week on The Local Show.